Last episode, we talked about civil conspiracy. And so today, let's talk about your family court experiences because that's where it often occurs. What led you into the family court system?
What led me into the family court system is I was a victim of domestic violence and it was overlooked in a divorce case. And so that's what a divorce situation led me into family court, a divorce and custody situation.
What were you expecting going in, and how did reality differ from that?
Hey, I'm just like any other person that lives in America. Hey, I'm going to court and my side of the story will be heard. And I have these paid attorneys and they're going to fight for me. And my child will be protected and the best interests of the child will be presented to the court realistically. And none of that happened.
I agree. I think that most people have the perception that our courts are just, that it's a great system, that everyone will have their fair opportunity to be heard and considered. But more and more, I'm seeing from shows like yours and books like yours that the family court is not set up at all for justice. How would you describe it? I'm going to let you talk about what it really is set up for.
Well, in my opinion, the family court is a money-making machine, and people can just come in and make false allegations. People that don't even really know you can give statements in court without even having any clear evidence of what they're saying. A lot of hearsay happens in family court.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. And who is the oversight? Who is checking that things are being factual in court?
I don't believe anybody's checking. I think
Yeah.
whoever can make up the best story and whoever has the most money, they are the most convincing.
So, can you then describe moments where you felt silenced or dismissed? Can you give us some examples of that?
Felt silence the whole time during the trial when I was in family court because I had to suffer because my first attorney did not show up to court. The family court entered orders at the temporary hearings and they stayed with those orders no matter what. So during the marriage, I was experiencing domestic violence and that was just totally overlooked and was not documented at all.
And your child, it was a custody battle, correct?
There was.
So, how was your child handled, and how were you silenced in the effort to protect your child?
I don't think my child had a fair trial either at all. Well, as a matter of fact, I know that my child didn't have a fair trial. And there were people that were paid. This was a private case. This was not some kind of public, like charity type case. I mean, some big time money was spent in this case. My court battle lasted about 14 years. It costed me as an individual over $100,000, hiring multiple attorneys, going in front of multiple judges, and still never got anywhere. And I did get somewhere when I prayed and I asked God to help me with what's happening to me. I don't understand this. I went through some red tape and figured out a way to go in court myself as a pro se litigant. And I brought all of this evidence before the court that had been hidden for years.
Which is interesting because you spent $100,000 because you were hiring attorneys
Yes.
who were not doing their job. And potentially, more and more, I see that these attorneys, they make backroom deals. They seem to just do what it takes to keep people fighting because
Yes.
then you have to keep hiring them.
And if you
And
don't
so
pay, you'll
you
end
have
up
to
in
present the
jail.
evidence.
You'll end up in jail or you'll have liens put on property if you have any, or you'll just be left paying them for the rest of your life.
There is no way it should have taken 14 years and $100,000 for you to be able to stand up for your rights as a parent and to protect your child. Those numbers are so astronomical. There's no arguing against your position that the family courts are corrupt.
In my opinion, those are some of the most corrupt courts in America. And I'm glad that it wasn't a criminal case because had that been a criminal case, I probably would be in prison for life.
And I know people who've gone through those situations. I've seen family court trials turn into criminal courts. And you're in Marianne Petrie's book, Raised by These Wolves, Volume 3. And there is a story in there, Patriot Mom and Dad is what they're referred to. And right now, because of a family court case, and the litigant got the son-in-law sent to prison for life, literally, because she had one of the children accuse him of sexual assault, although the child didn't even know what she was accusing him of. So they managed to spin it from family court to criminal court and put him into prison. It's unreal. It's unreal what's going on in our country. Oh, it's heartbreaking. So because clearly it's power, it's money, it's influence. That is what's driving our courts. And how did that show up in your case?
It showed up in the beginning because I was financially abused throughout the marriage. And luckily, I didn't just use my credit irresponsibly because that's what got me through that. I didn't have any money. I fought the case with credit and I was asked not to work, but I wasn't that slow.
So, what impact do you think the court had on your mental health and even your safety?
The court put me at risk so many times, like on visitation with the child. I had to go in the area where my second footstool lived.
What should survivors know before entering family court? What advice would you give to someone who's kind of at the beginning of this, who's probably still believing, maybe they're starting to realize that they're not going to get justice, as you've explained, but still not fully understanding what they're up against? How would you counsel someone? And along those lines, can you share some of the things that they will take from reading your book? Because I know that we're limited in time here and there's so much that you have to teach, but can you just kind of distill some of your advice and then share a little bit what they will take if they read your book that will help them to navigate this gauntlet, as I sometimes call it, just running a gauntlet?
But you can't correct anything if you don't know what you're facing. If you don't know the process, then how are you going to name if someone is doing something wrong? How are you going to articulate that? You're not going to be able to. So you have to do a lot of homework, even though
How did they do that? Where did they go for that education? If
they
they
have
don't
different
know.
websites online.
Okay.
Go to some legal dictionaries, family court dictionaries, and just look at whatever order they're supposed to be typing up or documentation. Go and research what that is and how it's supposed to happen, the process. And I'm not going to tell anybody that this was easy because this took a lot out of my life. It took a lot out of me as an individual.
So you ended up doing this research and starting to figure out what should have been happening as you went along.
I did at the end
Mhm,
of the case after many years
mhm.
of letting things be the way that the family court had deemed them, but I was able to go back and question everything that happened. And it was hard. It was a hard task, but it can be done.
Yeah.
When you're desperate and destitute, you'll do some things.
And I know in your book you do outline some of the things that went, you give a lot of evidence from your specific situation that could serve as a model for them.
Yes, that could be the beginning point. Maybe not to say that it's exactly the way things may be happening in their case, but it may give them an idea.
Yeah.
And that's not practicing law. That's just telling my story as to
Yeah.
what happened to me. So you can maybe
Yeah.
able to associate something, have some type of guideline instead of going in blind. Just put it like that.
I think that probably at first is the most important research to do, to know your story. I've talked about Marianne Petrie's. She's got a whole book series titled Raised by These Wolves, and the wolves is referring to the people who are involved in the family court system. And her books are full of individuals' first person stories about going through family court. And I would say read your book, read those books. When you start to see the patterns, you really see. I think pattern recognition is important. So that way, if something's happening, it's not an isolated, unique thing with you. and what it really means. And so I think that even alongside of the actual legal structures and the legal actions that should and shouldn't be happening, just to be able to see what has happened so you know what to watch for, that is the best way to go in wide-eyed and informed, and not so easily manipulated or so naive that you trust that just because you paid a lawyer $30,000, smiles at you and assures you they're going to do a good job, but then turns around and actually works against you. You wouldn't believe that that would happen. But when you read story after story after story where this is happening, then you can start to go into it ready to defend. Because I think you have to be willing to defend yourself, not just against the other side, but sometimes your own side. Because how would you say a person should go about finding the best counsel and the best lawyer? Is there anything that you did end up with a good lawyer towards the end? Is that right?
That's very false.
Okay.
That's false.
You never had a good one?
Never had a good one. Oh, I had a lawyer that sits high and looks low. That's who my lawyer was that sent me in the courtroom as a pro se litigant. But in my opinion, none of the people that I hired were good lawyers, because if they were good lawyers, this story wouldn't have turned out the way it did, and I wouldn't have been able to write that memoir about
Yeah.
all the injustices that I went through at their hands.
Wow. So not one lawyer was good in your case. I've
No.
seen some where they finally did. I believe Marianne Petrie finally ended up with a good
Yes,
lawyer.
she may
Yeah.
have, but
So
it wasn't me.
So do you think people should try to be pro se litigants from the get-go? What are some of the things that people should know about that? Can you talk a little bit more about what that means, how that works? I mean, you spent $100,000 on lawyers, so clearly, maybe and never had a good one. So it seems like your other avenue might be what people should look into.
Well, if you want the truth and the court may make you feel like you don't know what you're doing, but you know your truth, because only you can state your truth. And when you pay some of these people, it's a good chance that your truth will never be told.
That's a good
It's
point.
a good chance, no matter how much money you have spent, no matter how much time you have spent, your truth still may be hidden.
Yeah.
And you're not going to hide the truth from yourself. You're going to be your best advocate.
Yeah.
I'm not giving legal advice, but I was desperate. So I went in as a pro se litigant in family court, represented myself, and presented mounds and mounds of evidence to the court that had never been presented before.
And that's a lot of, that's a whole other episode that we could do just on, how to be a pro se litigant. But I think that's a really good place to end this episode on, because we're getting low on time, to just be able to know that that exists. Because I imagine probably a lot of people don't know they could represent themselves and might think that they're not a lawyer. So how in the world could they do a good job? But the truth is, they're going to do the very best job that does get done in the family court.
I mean, because what do you have to lose? You're fighting for your life. You're
Mhm.
fighting for your children. That's your livelihood. I was desperate and I fought as hard as I could. That's why I'm sitting here today, because I fought and I never gave up.